I was working from Philly that day, and I always would watch Oprah. And so I had Oprah in the background. Her and Gail walk out, and they're both wearing my jewelry. And James Taylor starts playing Fire and Rain. And Fire and Rain was a song that Neil and I listened to the night that he convinced me to leave my job and do this business. It was the craziest thing. I just started like bawling hysterically. And I was like, this is a sign. That was crazy.
Being a mom is the toughest job there is, and it doesn't come with instructions. So it's okay if you don't have all the answers. We'll figure it out together. This is Mom Brain with Hilaria Baldwin and Daphne Oz.
It took me 6 months for my brain to return to know that I threw it out.
What was? Oh no! So you didn't even know.
I didn't even know.
I guess that's better.
No, it made me fucking crazy.
It's better, but
it does make you crazy. It also
I
makes
know,
you like second guess everything.
Oh, so you just were looking for it all the time.
Looking.
There was no. Oh, I was thinking that you didn't even notice it was missing. And I was like, maybe that's
so
better.
for like 2 months, I wasn't looking for it, and then I started looking for it, and I couldn't find it. And in looking for it, I started cleaning, and I threw it out. And then like 6 months later, I remembered that I threw it out.
Oh my gosh.
And you're thinking like, so it's just like sparkling somewhere in like
the dump.
That nobody will ever, like no one will even get to enjoy it.
Oh, I hope some like really diligent garbage collection man like was like, you know what, I have a good feeling about this particular bag.
In 2,000 years, some like archaeologist.
The culture of 2018 was very bizarre. They threw away hugely valuable good diamonds for posterity.
Banana peels.
That story always like on the one hand eats me alive and like makes me so anxious for you, and also gives me some solace because I literally ate a bagel, had taken my earrings off to clean them. I clean my stones with Windex if anyone wants to know. It really it works amazingly.
No way.
Yeah, that's a trick.
Yeah,
Windex
non-foaming acetone is what jewelers
toothbrush.
use, or Windex with a toothbrush. It's like genius. But anyway, I took it off. I was letting them soak in the Windex for a second. I ate my bagel. I had one next to the other. They called us to go down to tape. I put them all together, crumpled in a ball, and threw them out. And I remember in the middle of the taping, I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah, diamonds in the trash. Went trash diving. Thank goodness they hadn't collected it yet, found them. But it was like, it made me feel not like such a crazy person that I had, in my haste to clean up after myself, just tossed away my favorite
had
earrings.
this moment after I threw it out that I was like, maybe I should, like something felt funny. Like maybe I should just go like check that bag one more time. And then I was like, nah, I'm too lazy. Like literally just too lazy. And just never did.
Wow.
Well, jewelry is actually a perfect place to get into conversation with. By the way, you guys, you are listening to the one and only Rachel Blumenthal here on Mom Brain today. And part of what's so funny, and I want to get back to the whole mom brain conversation, in specific, the like loss of order and loss of predictability of your life, because I think someone like you, Rachel, who is so used to order and organization, it really throws us for a double loop. But you are someone who's been in business since you were, and when did you start Rachel Leigh? Like,
I was 23.
Okay, so you're 23 years old and you start your first business, which is a jewelry line. Tell everybody about that process and the ride of Rachel Leigh.
Well, I was working in fashion at Yves Saint Laurent, and I was in this incredibly creative environment. It was the era of Tom Ford, and like fashion was just like so booming, and there was so much money, and it was like really sexy. And my role wasn't particularly creative. And so I went to the bead stores on 6th Avenue and bought materials and made myself a ring. I like literally handmade myself a ring. I was an economics and political science major, so I know nothing about jewelry other than I like it. And long story short, editors from Lucky Magazine, who I worked with at YSL, saw me and saw the ring and decided to feature me as a designer.
Wow.
And when you're sort of like in that PR world, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I was like, all right, this is fun. Like, I'll go along with it. And about a month later, Daily Candy called and they said, we're going to feature your brand. What's your website? And this was in 2003. So I had no website. I had no nothing. And I called this guy that I hadn't seen since I was 13, who was in my bar mitzvah class. And I was like, I heard you like do websites. Didn't even know what it meant. Can you make me a website?
Did your mother tell his mother that
Totally.
you were like
100%. She was like, you should call this guy. I was like, who?
That's awesome.
So anyway, long story short, landing page. My website is a landing page, a photo, and an email address, and that's it.
Very chic.
Very
minimalist.
Chic. It was bare bones. Couldn't even like collect money on this thing. And Daily Candy hit. This was in 2003. It was like the only game in town, if you remember. And overnight, buyers and editors and customers that wanted this brand that literally didn't exist. I had like handmade a couple more things for the photo shoot. And Shop Up picked me up as like one of their first jewelry designers. And I started doing trunk shows at Henry Bendel. And I don't know. I was like, I'm like onto something. I had no idea what. And I was dating my now husband at the time, who's like the risk taker in the relationship. And he was like, this is amazing. Like, you're going to build a business and like, you should do this. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I work at YSL. I've got my thing going. I like it. And he was like, no, you've got to do this. And so he like really pushed me to quit my job. I set up shop in my living room. I figured I'd go back in 6 months when it didn't work. And I taught myself everything about building a business. I took what I knew from PR and applied it to sales. I was the manufacturer. I was the messenger. I was like the everything. And I built that company over the course of 8 years. We were in about 500 retailers worldwide. We did private label for American Eagle, Target, and J. Crew. And it was such a wild journey. And it was the perfect example of like what a baby steps business means. You know, it really started out with something that was in my comfort zone. I had $100. I went to the bead store. I made the jewelry. I sold it for $1,000. And I had more money to go buy more materials. You know, I didn't have to invest big amounts of money into inventory. I didn't really even have to have a website at the time. So it was very sort of like low barrier entry, like low risk. But I really sort of taught myself over time and got it to a place of a comfort zone where I was like willing to take bigger risks. I was willing to hire a team. I was willing to sort of expand distribution. And then I hit a point where I felt like I wasn't learning anymore. I really felt like I needed to be challenged, which is when I decided to exit the company. I sold it about 7 years ago.
Now, were you always sort of handicrafty, artsy growing up?
Yes. I'm like really good with my hands. Mm-hmm. I could like make anything, though I can't cook for my life. So I have a lot to learn from you too.
I feel like if you can make jewelry, though, I feel like we could get some solid, pasta bolognese out of you.
I mean, you'd be pushing it. I would try though. Really good with my hands.
That's so interesting. And so do you bring that into your parenting? Like, do you do art projects with your kids and stuff like that? Or are you just kind of letting them be them?
I don't do it as much as I probably would have thought I would. I think to your point, like life is so chaotic that I'm not as sort of like organized or well-structured or well-planned a parent as I would like to be. Like I have a lot of guilt over it. But then part of me says that maybe that's like helping to build their independence and their ability to be creative and kind of figure out their own thing.
Of course. I just got origami and lanyard.
Oh my! Why?
Oh,
why?
Lanyard.
Lanyard.
It is amazing.
No, lanyard's
sure,
amazing, but origami is actual hell because
really, I'm so much better at the origami than the lanyard.
But if you're sitting there doing it with her, it's not like you can be like, "Here, kid, here's a diagram. Start folding. Make me 1,000 cranes."
No, but she like comes up with her own thing. Whereas the lanyard, like you have to start it, and then you have to. I'm like watching YouTube
Oh no, I love
clips
lanyard.
of it.
I like that. That takes me right back to Ramaquay Summer Camp, New Jersey.
Wait,
like,
that's where Griffin goes.
Wait, no, you're kidding me.
And that's where he picked it up this summer.
It's a thing
It's
because
still
you
a
have
thing.
this long schlep in the bus, and that you can. They had metal rods behind the seats, so you could
could just do
you
it.
could tie it to the base of it. The only issue is then how do you get it off without cutting it and the whole thing. But I got the box stitched down. I got the whole
Well, so that's what I tried to start with the other day because I got this book that was like, I don't know why I decided to get a book in like the age of YouTube, but I got this book and it was like the easiest thing to do was like this box thing. And it's not easy. Not easy for she's 5. Not easy. So we decided we'd start with braiding.
braiding.
We went to
Yeah,
braiding.
for a 5-year-old, that's hard.
We're still not very good at it.
Philomena, air quote, braids my hair, which just involves
Twisting,
sort of
right?
like pulling,
Yes.
a lot of pulling.
Lots of
And
knots.
like the knotting. Yes.
But she loves it. It really, and then as many bows as possible. We are this whole JoJo Siwa thing has come big into our house all of a sudden.
Bows.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, so how'd she
nowhere.
learn about JoJo?
So we have an older cousin who lives in LA who's very cool.
Oh,
She's
okay.
7, and it's like a big deal. You know, whatever Gracie thinks is cool. And Gracie knew about JoJo. She went to a JoJo concert for her birthday, and she had the big bows and the, glitter backpacks and whatever else. And also Target. Like Target just sells me all the JoJo stuff. Anyway, but what I think is actually interesting about it is the way that culture pollinates, and like then they it does. In some ways, I find that it actually has been interesting. So Philomena, my oldest, is super creative. Like we took our like garbage staging area. Don't tell her. It's like a little, concrete area right by the back door, and made it her art room. Which is great because nothing can stain. You would just mop up any paint that spills around. But she's back there. I won't hear her for hours, and she'll be back there making these huge, elaborate paintings and cutting things out. She has these very,
That's
very
the difference
dull
between boys
scissors.
and girls.
Yes.
You could never do that with a boy.
No.
I like when I had I like couldn't get over the fact that you could just put her there, and she
she'd
could
stay.
talk to her dolls for like hours.
Yes.
And like dress them and like pretend play, and like boys don't do that.
No. If it gets too quiet, you worry
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Especially with as many boys as I have. It's like, it's bad. It's a bloodbath, literally.
But I do like, back to our point about letting kids have their own creative moments and not overstructuring it. And this was a very circuitous, apropos of mom brain way of getting here. I do think that on the one hand, I look at, some of these Instagram moms that I follow that have these wonderful projects set up for their kids. And every time it rains, they're like out, they have a craft closet and they come out with these most amazing projects. And I want so desperately to be that person. And then at the same time, we get to a rainy day and I'm like, let's get in the car.
I'm
and,
also
go
like
somewhere.
afraid of clutter.
Yeah, that too.
Which is why Neil actually blames me for throwing out my ring, because he's like, you always like you literally throw everything out. But like, I'm so afraid of like the mess everywhere. And I just like, I have to let it go. Because like they need a place to make a mess.
Well, they also rediscover
I need the
things.
staging area is what I need.
The staging area is a really
It's a little
excellent
different
place.
in New York City, though. I know. Little different.
This is
Can you
the
go
beauty of
can you
being
go
in
sit on
Florida.
12th Street? Your staging area.
Don't you have a back stairwell? The garbage side.
It's literally called the corner of the street. You just send her out there. She'll stay in one place with her dolls.
Carmen's on the corner, panhandling and selling her art supplies. I do think that allowing them, and even we did a big cleanse of a lot of their toys this weekend to donate and to give away, and part of it was to open space for there to be creativity, but part of it was also just them rediscovering stuff that they had played with for many months and then forgotten about, and they come back to it.
Yeah.
So I do think that leaving kids with that open space is actually really important, and not trying to overstructure it and overplan it. But at the same time, I think that you end up with you ultimately have children, I think, that are here in part for you to learn from as much as for you to teach them things.
100. I had this like epiphany recently, which was that our kids are actually this like amazing, they're almost like a great excuse for us to let go and for us to follow their lead and just like be in the moment with them. Like it almost gives us permission as adults to like not have to be the adult, like not have to be the parent, not have to say like, don't touch that or don't stand on that or don't do that, or like, I don't know, like if you want to like stand at the dinner table while you eat dinner,
It's okay.
yeah,
There's
I'm
worse
like,
things, yeah.
what's like, they're not going to go to college standing on their chair at dinner, right?
But a lot of people don't parent in that way, and you know what? There's pros and cons to each one. Teaching a kid good table manners and stuff like that. There's definitely
You were
arguments
really big
for
on
doing
that growing up. I feel
table
like,
manners. Yeah, no, you have to know exactly where the fork and the knife is and everything, and have one hand on your lap, and then for me, you see how I'm sitting right now. For those of you who can't, because this is a podcast, I always curl my legs up underneath me. I used to get in a lot of trouble for that. But in other ways, I was very good at, like, my parents would just, like, let me go do flips and stuff like that, because I've always been kind of a monkey. But it's interesting watching your kids do that and not teaching them fear. Like, my kids are just like me. They want to climb up on everything, and it's a little bit dangerous. And I have to, like, take a deep breath and be like, are you comfortable with what you're doing? Are you aware of what's going on? But it's, yeah, it's finding that line of like letting them be kids, but then also having them respect what,
Yeah.
growing up
It's
and learning
it's
right
a
from wrong.
really challenging line, but there's something I think I realized also because our lives are so intense, right? Like we're working really intensely. And we have so many demands, and then we have, these children that we, want to sort of give the best of ourselves to. But there's moments where you just have nothing to give, and you don't even have the energy to be the mom and tell them what to do and be strict and the whole thing. And I realize in those moments that I'm just let's eat dessert on the kitchen floor. Who cares, And
It's called picking your battles. And the best thing about the line that you're talking about is being, the mother, the father, is that you get to decide what that line is. And it's not anyone else's line. And you kind of you have to sit with yourself at the end of the day and be like, hey, did that feel like a good choice? And you really get to say, hey, you know what? When we all look back, this is what I want it to be. I totally understand what you're saying about at the end of the day, you're like, I just don't have the energy. They'll all come to me and be like, this one did this and this one did this and this one did this. And I'm like, can we just be nice?
Yeah.
I can't even sort it out now. Just be nice, no hurting each other, smiles, laughing, everything, and go.
How do you feel about that line being fungible, though? Because John and I, that it can change, that it can be different from day to day. Because I feel like John and I just had this conversation because Philomena just turned 5 and she is in that huge testing phase. Everything is questioned, everything is pushback, and everything is she's just trying to figure out where the breaking point is and what she can get away with, even if she knows that we've already said no, or this is part of our, we don't do this or whatever. And I said to him, I think that part of where that comes from is because it's not always clear why one thing is allowed and other things are not, or why today it's okay, but some days we let them do backwards dinner where honestly it's for me, I want them to have ice cream earlier in the afternoon so they're not hyped up on sugar insane people by the time I'm trying to put them to bed. So we have dessert first and then they have dinner later, and they don't understand why that can't be every day, or why I don't. There are a bunch of things why some things on some days are allowed and other things on other days are not. And if your parent is supposed to be this sort of arbiter of everything, but the rules are changeable and the rules aren't always static, I guess it's confusing for them. But at the same time, we are human too. And there's some days where I'm much more patient and willing to just negotiate or be a part of explain the process of thinking. And some days I just need her to follow direction.
Carmen now, I mean, she's doing Carmen and Philomena are almost the same age. They're 6 months different. But Carmen will do the same thing where she'll ask again and again and again and again and again. And she knows. She'll even say to me, Mommy, I know if I say it enough times, you're probably going to change your mind. And I'm like, now you just lost it. Or she'll say, well, you said yesterday was a special day and I could have an extra special treat or something like that. So why aren't you doing that today? And I said, Carmen, that was the special day, and I'm going to stop giving you those special days if you're not going to understand that that's the time to do it. And then I sit down and explain to her, look, there's times when we can do something really great, and then there's times when we're going to do it most of the time in our more structured way. And you know what? You're going to have to get to the point. You can always ask me why, but you're going to have to get to the point where you say, okay, Mommy, I understand. I'll always explain it to you, but you're going to have to stop, because if you ask me for 10 minutes in a row, it's going to make me feel like not giving it to you the next time around. And I think that you can explain that to them. And I think that they can get to the point over time where they're mature enough to be able to receive that information. And I think it's important for them with their negotiation skills. I always look at, especially Carmen because she's older, but I always think what are the things that drive me crazy now that are going to serve her when she's 25 years old? And I don't want to break her.
Yeah, I totally respect the negotiation.
I'm
like, you go. You be the best little negotiator possible, right?
Because for what you want.
That's going to be really good skill for you. Yeah.
And let them win and then point it out to them. And don't look at it as a defeat for you. But then at the same time, sometimes you just got to listen to Mommy and you got to say, okay, Mommy, that's fine with me. Just once in a while, throw me a bone.
It is true. It must be hard because we do always, no one's even, right? Everyone's uneven. And so we do change the rules on them so frequently. But
confusing.
That's also life.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Life does change the rules on you every now and then too. Okay, so you exited the Rachel Leigh 7 years ago, and you conveniently neglected to mention that you were also one of Oprah's favorite things, which was a huge deal.
It was crazy.
So exciting.
It was so crazy, and I was sick with the flu when it happened, and I missed the first phone call And,
So Oprah called again.
And I like was having a heart attack that I missed the first phone call. But yeah, it was one of Oprah's favorite things, which was incredibly cool. The coolest thing actually was that at the time we were half living in New York, half living in Philadelphia because Neil was in business school at Wharton. And I was working from Philly that day, and I always would watch Oprah. And so I had Oprah in the background, and I'm doing my work, and I'm listening to Oprah. And James Taylor is on the show that day. And her and Gail walk out, and they're both wearing my jewelry. And James Taylor starts playing Fire and Rain. And Fire and Rain was a song that Neil and I listened to the night that he convinced me to leave my job and do this business. It was the craziest thing. I just started like bawling hysterically. And I was like, this is a sign. It was crazy.
I love when there are those little magical moments that the universe gives you of just affirmation that you're on the right path, or affirmation that taking the risk was the right choice, or just that there's like those little synchronous moments that make sense to only you. You know, that
totally.
I love that.
Yeah.
So there's something else that I think is really interesting. Both you and Neil have pursued extremely entrepreneurial paths. You know, he starting Warby Parker, you moving on from jewelry into first Cricket Circle, which to my mind was like one of the first mom-sourced mommy blogs. Like it was meant to be a New York mother's guide to living your best motherhood, I think, if I am summarizing it.
Yeah, it was meant to be like the cliff notes of what to buy when you have a baby. This idea that, you know, we all received all these crazy lists, and as a first-time mom, you have such anxiety that, like, if you buy the wrong bib or the wrong sippy cup, like, your kids aren't going to college. And you're, like, you know, obsessing, and, like, you're, like, sweating in the aisle of Bye Bye Baby. And if you looked at cohorts of moms anywhere, they all bought the exact same things, right? Because it was oriented around how they lived, how they traveled, what their lifestyle was. And so I was like, God, like if we can create a really simple algorithm that could help people and say, like, these are the only 3 strollers for you that you should consider, and create content that would tell you, like, what the hell is a telescoping handle, and like, why does it matter to me?
Right.
Then we could really be like an incredibly trusted resource. And so we built that content channel, and we built that as a resource, and had such incredible feedback, and, you know, really became people's like lifeline for what to buy when they have a baby. And it was also during that period of time where it was acceptable to raise venture capital when you had no idea how you were going to monetize your business. And so all through the business, we had this like insane engagement where people just like anything we put down, they were picking up, and like whatever we recommended, they were buying. But we couldn't figure out like how we were going to actually like make money to run a business. And we kept listening to the feedback we were receiving, which was that this was so valuable when I was a new parent and I didn't know what to buy. But now that I have more confidence, what's actually frustrating is that every season I'm replacing a full dresser of clothes. And it's time consuming, and it's frustrating, and it's like the least gratifying thing on the planet. And it's really hard to find cool clothes that aren't expensive.
Right.
And we were like, okay, now that's something. That's like something we could actually build a business around. And so we actually went to retail and bought product and started testing it. We tested 300 customers out of my living room. It all comes back to the living room. And we're like, is this can actually be something? But really grounded again in the data. And so this was grounded in much more sophisticated data of getting to know the customer, the kids' preferences, the parents' preferences, and the idea of could we actually do your shopping for you every season and make it really easy. It was really, really important to me that we were designing and manufacturing our own product because I just didn't feel like there was a really great product in the market that both the parents and the kids liked. And we wanted to just like, you know, very much playing off of the vision of Cricket Circle, which was we just want to make your life easier. Like the only thing we want to do is make your life easier, make you feel like a good mom, like validate that you're doing an awesome job, and anything that we could do to sort of like simplify that along the way. And that was the vision for Rockets. And so we launched Rockets of Awesome about 2.5 years ago, thanks to this amazing community that like really gave us the information and the direction to be able to do it.
Well, we're big fans of Rockets of Awesome in our house. They have like the cutest
They
stuff.
do. And all machine washable, which to me as a parent of toddlers is like there's plenty of, I will never forget, especially with my first, people, very kind, generous people would give me beautiful layettes and children's clothing made with, mother of pearl buttons and like 40 of them.
Cashmere.
Oh my God, when anything comes with buttons, especially
at the
when you have
crotch.
to change their diaper, I'm like, how much do you hate me?
I literally was like, how much do you hate me that every time I change a diaper, I have to undo
Have you tried-
12 mother of pearl
Have you tried the
buttons?
ones with magnets?
Yes, they're amazing.
No.
It used to be called Magnificent Baby. They just renamed it.
Okay.
I don't know. They're like
Cute. I've
God's
never heard
gift
of that.
to
That's
mothers.
interesting. I wonder. I've never even
It just
heard
like
of that.
in the middle of the night just goes like
Yep.
this.
No, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, that's why I moved to gowns. All of my children,
the
boy
gowns
and
are
girl,
good.
wear gowns.
Or you know what?
because it's like-
Naked is okay too. Just the
Naked's
diaper.
solid.
I mean, why do they need pajamas all the time?
But the machine washable piece is a huge one because who wants to? First of all, you don't want the chemicals next to your baby's skin, but you don't want to have to dry clean baby clothes, and you don't want to have to hand wash baby clothes, and your life is important and should go on as well. And
Totally.
I think your point about making life easier for parents and for children, and wanting parents to feel good in their choices and happy in those choices, I think is such an important creed for a company geared towards that group, and that they can still be stylish and so like Philomena lives in her shiny jacket. She loves her like tulle skirts and everything, and the fact that it's all, like I don't care if she gets her paint, masterpiece all over it because it just goes in the wash. I think it's funny that you, for having been such a serial entrepreneur, that there's still, well, first of all, that it seems like this third transition or the one into Rockets of Awesome was really the most obvious path, maybe, as in like you really listened to your customer and you had something to go on there, but it's still risk taking. And you seem like someone who really loves to plan and you want to, make sure you've researched the answer. And there isn't the obvious answer when you're going into this, sort of great unknown. So how do you get over that hurdle and move
It's
into
so
it
interesting.
happily?
I mean, if you had asked me, coming out of college, I would have been like, I'm going to go work for a company. I'm going to climb the ladder. I'm going to go to business school and I'm going to be the president or CEO of that company someday. And I was the most risk adverse human you had ever met. And like everything was planned and I was like always early and everything was like super perfect. And I don't know if it's my husband who is like the risk taker and always late and like, don't worry, it'll all work out. Or if it's being in this world of entrepreneurship where nothing ever goes the way that you plan, but I've been like completely broken down and I'm a totally different person than I was like 15 years ago, which is so weird to look back on. And I don't exactly know when it happened. But I think because it's constantly changing, because you can put sort of like your best foot forward and your best vision forward, but at the end of the day, the path is never what you expect it to be. And so I think I had to sort of teach myself to be okay with the unknown and with change and with failure. And more than anything, I think that it's about having a vision, having a passion, and being so deeply obsessed that like nothing can get in your way. Like nothing, like anyone who says no, anyone who says like it can't be done, I'm like, get out of my way because I'm going there. And I might take some bumps along the way, but I'm going to get there,
Let me ask you that because that's something I think
Reagan Moya Jones, remember? She said, I don't tell anyone when I have my idea.
So that's my point. Yeah, a couple entrepreneurs we've had on the show and that I've read about have always said, like, especially when it's a deeply personal and creative idea, I don't tell anyone about it until it's already too far gone to change my mind. Do you talk about your ideas early on?
I think it's a big mistake not to. And it's interesting. It's interesting for her to say because it's so personal. I think most entrepreneurs don't share because they're afraid someone's going to take their idea. And the reality is like there's no original idea in this world. Right. It's about the execution. And I've found that it's the people that you least expect to give you really good advice or to poke holes in things that you wouldn't have expected. And I think it's really important to have such a strong point of view that you're like, this is my vision and I'm going to listen and I'm going to like sort of know how to filter the feedback. But the feedback's really important because you start to be just talking to yourself and you're operating in your own bubble. And that's never
you have
productive.
to have a little bit of perspective. You start to lack the perspective.
Yeah.
That's very bold of you. I love that. It's very.
Are you the same in parenting? Do you take a lot of advice or did you ask for a lot of advice in parenting?
No, none. But not because I knew how to do it. Again, like I was so afraid to project my like type A onto my kids that I never read a book. I never took a class. I never asked how you do things because I really wanted to follow their lead.
Right.
And I really wanted to like live this life through them. And I'm sure I would have like done things more efficiently, or like, you know, I'm sure I could be doing them much better than I am, but like it just felt right for us. And, you know, I think it's fun to like you'll hear like, you know, we're always talking about like how we do things for our kids or in our lives. And I'm like, oh, so like that's how you were supposed to do it. And then like, you know, 8 years later, I'll start doing it the right way.
But your kids survived.
Yeah.
They were
And
okay.
thrived. You the best kids ever.
You completely made it through. You know what? I think a lot of it comes back to what it sounds like is that you married your yin-yang marriage. And within your marriage, it sounds like you have two very different styles. And you guys, I mean, Alec and I are so different. Like, I don't think you can find like two more different people and put them together. And I think that kind of helps us go through it with it. And I think
so,
that
yeah.
when you have that, you're living your process, but you're seeing something completely different all the time.
Yeah.
Well, and
I know,
also,
it's-
I think different parts of childhood require different responses, right? So you're going to have some parts of some ages and some challenges that need the like, we're just going to go with this. We're going to let them lead. Let the kids lead. We're going to, you know, follow along with what they need. We're going to be really fun and silly and playful and not plan it and whatever. And then there's some parts of childhood where like someone really needs to step in with some order and some structure and lay down the law, right? So I think that's actually nice to have people who in their own lives thrived through different things. John is so, I mean, he's such a planner. He's got lists for everything, and everything gets crossed off the list. And like, he signs every email, like, you know, kind regards, and like it's a whole thing, you know. And I envy him so much because at the end of the night, and it's not to say that he gets everything done perfectly all day, every day. Most days he does, but he goes to bed at night, or he like signs off, and even though he's never really off the line, he enjoys his free time. He enjoys the kids. He enjoys like our time as a family, guilt free, because like he's structured his life so that he feels like in every possible category he is maximizing his moment there, where I'm like trying to do 7 things at once. I'm like answering emails and writing thank you notes and like trying to like organize for the kids and cook something, and like it's just scattered, and everything always feels very sort of like it's coming apart at the seams.
But you're a lot of fun, Daphne.
But I'm super
You're
fun.
so fun. You're like, you walk into the room and
like-
we're like, wow, what is this? We're in 700 different places. So fun.
And we also have like 45 jobs.
A lot
and
of
like,
jobs.
Nobody talks about that, right? Like, I have the best husband on the planet and like such a good partner to me, but like he does one thing.
Yeah, no, he's on a
Like,
conference call and he's on a conference
he
call.
does his
You're on a
job.
conference call and you're like changing a diaper and
Yeah,
making, you know.
he does his job, and like I do like the house, the kids, the job, the 55 things,
Yeah.
you know? Like it's just, I don't know, and it works for us, but like it's a lot to figure out how to balance.
Yeah. No, I think that's part of it too. Is I think our to-do list, there are numerous of them, and they keep being added to, and lots of people can add to them. It's not just what's going on in your one specific professional obligation. What is that like, though? You know, you have Griffin, your son, and my favorite, your 5-year-old princess. Is she 5? No, 4. Jemma.
she's
She'll be
almost
4. They obviously are at ages where they still require a lot of parental oversight and a lot of guidance, and you and Neil are both running businesses. How do you juggle that? How do you make sense of that? How do you find time for each other? Like, what does that end up looking like in your life?
I actually find that the older they get, the more they need you emotionally, right? When they're little, they like really need you physically to like feed them and change them and all those things. But Griffin, he's 8, he's in 2nd grade, and it's like, you know, I found like 1st and 2nd grade to be like really emotionally like challenging times of like so much change. They're learning to read and write, and it's getting, you know, more complex. It was just that moment where I was like, I need to be here more. Like you could just like feel it in your kid. You know, Neil and I tend to go out like almost every night of the week, and I made a real effort this year of saying like I'm only going out 1 or 2 nights max, but I'm home every single night to do homework with him. And it's really, really important to me because like he just like needs that support right now. And I've seen sort of the ebbs and flows of it being hard for him and then easy for him. But just like knowing that I'm there, even if I'm not doing anything, I'm just like sitting there. I think that like emotional support is really helpful for him.
That's
and
super
it like
interesting.
makes me feel like I'm like proud of myself for not being selfish this year, because I tend to be like pretty selfish, and so I'm like, good job, like you weren't so selfish.
See, we're all growing. We're all being parented.
Your homework is my homework.
Yeah, totally.
We spelled the cat ran across the
Isn't
street.
that funny? You graduate and you're like, I will never have to go to school again. I'm free of homework forever. And then it's like, no, you're just
Oh my god!
back
And we're
to the
in
beginning.
geometry, and I
Oh,
did
gosh.
not remember. I'm like Googling
You're doing
like what a
geometry
rhombus
first and
is.
second grade?
Yeah.
Oh no.
A
Like,
rhombus.
do you know what a rhombus is?
I think
Because
that word.
two parallel equalateral sides.
okay, you're
As-
just like a
Is that
goody
real?
two
Is that-
shoes.
wait, is that real?
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
no.
right.
Am I right? Am I
Yes,
actually- Wow.
I googled it.
Literally, geometry is probably my worst. I'm not a spatial person. I can't like. My brain doesn't function that way. I need physical things to be able to visualize. But I think that's interesting too. It's just being able to be aware of there are different points in your children's lives where they'll need different levels of attention from you and different physical and emotional output from you.
Yeah.
And being able to be flexible to that, I think, is really important. But also, we had this conversation on a recent episode about letting your kids struggle with Dr. Tova Klein, actually, and about this idea that parents had been fed this myth that it's our job to make our kids happy. And not that what you're doing with Griffin is, quote unquote, making him happy. That's obviously like helping him succeed and helping him feel good about his performance and make sense of everything. But this idea that that as a parent, you want your kids to be happy, of course. But part of being happy is struggling and having success through that struggle.
Totally, yeah.
So have you seen that with either Griffin or Jemma now? Or?
Well, it's interesting. Griffin's like starting to have some of those like tension relationships at school, where he'll come home and I'll be like, this kid or that kid.
How do you deal with that? Do you want to go lace some people out at the playground?
Well, sometimes I'm like, I think I'm too low key about it, because I'll be like, all right, like you're probably just like complaining and I don't do anything about it. And then like once you start to hear about it like the fourth or fifth time, you're like, okay, something's going on. But yeah, this sort of like idea of like teaching them to kind of like suffer through it, but giving them the tools to also problem solve and feel like they can take control of it. Right. And I try not to sort of like involve the parent. I did have to involve the parent this time, and thankfully it was like a really nice sort of like, let's figure this out together. But like, I'm also like, he's probably just as much as difficult as this other kid is, you know? And so like, just wanting to have awareness of it, but helping him sort of navigate it, I think was almost more important.
You know what I do? Because Carmen often comes home with like different things. She's very, very, very sensitive. Is I'll ask, when it seems like a really dramatic situation, I'll ask about it in many different ways. I'm like, so when this happened, you were over here, and this one was over here, and this happened, and this, and what exactly is that? And then like 5 minutes later in a completely different. So wait, walk me through this again. And then you start to hear like inconsistencies or consistencies in the story.
Yeah.
And then you come through. The other day she came home and she's like, my friend, she took half of my heart and she broke it into a million pieces. I mean, it's like super telenovela, but like super. And I'm like, so what exactly happened? And it was like a complete misunderstanding. You could tell that the other girl didn't mean to do anything. And that ended up being the story. It's like, I understand that they can hurt that way, but you also have to be able to look at the other person's perspective and look at their intentions. What was the intentions of the other person? Was it to hurt you? Or was it that they were trying to be nice or just living their life and it kind of like, upset you a little bit?
Yeah.
But it's hard.
But
It's hard.
Those emotional tools, I actually feel like as adults, the things that the gaps that most of us have are in our emotional skill sets, are in our ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes or interpret a situation not so personally, but more like holistically of what was going on, or to have the negotiation skills to be able to go to someone and reason with them, or to have a conversation, talk to someone you don't necessarily like or you think has been mean to you and try to resolve it. And I think that is 1,000% the strength that I think kids need to have or need to be taught early on or have fostered in them early on so that they grow from there. Because to your point, if you let them feel injured and then you don't give them a way to like resolve from there,
or you like do it for them. I know, and it's hard. It's like, and you don't have complete visibility as to what's actually happening, right? And so I think because I try to like downplay it or like not make it as like catastrophic as it is or might be, and I try to give the tools, then I'm like, God, what happens like when it's like really bad and I don't know?
Right.
And you want them to talk to you. So you don't make like a huge deal out of
Yeah.
everything, but you also don't want to belittle all these things that are in their minds such a big deal.
Right, like I remember growing up, like when you came home and you told your mom, like, you know, Jessica and I aren't best, or like we're not best friends anymore, and like I don't like her. Like my mom like still hates her to this day, you know, and so like I have to figure out how to like not do that with my kids,
Right.
so that they talk to you.
That's so funny. But
Hilarious.
isn't that interesting how we like go the opposite of what we experience because you're like still
Yes.
traumatized by that?
Totally.
Now, I think the most important thing is that our kids feel that they're listened to, that they're taken seriously, but then we have to bring, so like I do that. Listen, I'm listening to you. I'm taking you seriously. Now let's walk through it and let's try to understand it from everybody's perspective, and then come
And
to,
here are the tools.
and here are the tools.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I find with Carmen, by like the time we get to the tools, sometimes she's like focusing on
it.
something completely different.
like,
and
"We're
I'm
not talking about this
I'm like, this
anymore."
is a profound conversation, and she's like, "Are we having ice cream for dessert?"
So given that you and Neil have both taken this entrepreneurial path, do you find that with your kids, you see it budding? Do you try to foster it in some ways? Are they like running the world's best lemonade stand every summer? You know?
It's so funny. Like you feel like you give your kids everything, but for some reason, like all Griffin ever wants is money. He's like, I need money. And I'm like, okay, like, what are you going to do with this money? So he's very motivated by money. And, you know, like every good family, we set him up with a lemonade stand. But as entrepreneurs, we had to teach him what it meant to run a business. And so he learned all about his cost of goods, which
Cogs. Good
his
old
cogs.
cogs.
And so we went and we bought all the materials. We saved all the receipts. He sold his lemonade and his cookies. And then we totaled how much he made, his revenue. And we taught him about his cost of goods. We totaled all the receipts. We deducted the cost of goods, and that was his profit. And he wasn't very happy about it. But then the second time he did the lemonade stand, we did it again. And he was like, but Mom, I already paid my cost of goods last time. And I was like, I know, but you had more cost of goods because you had to buy more lemonade this time. So he's learning. And, you know, I think it is really important for them to understand sort of like, you know, you don't just like make money out of nothing.
Right,
like,
where money comes
actually,
from.
like money goes into something to make money, but it's fun for them to really be like, they come to our offices all the time. Griffin, again, very motivated by money. He's learning how to code. He's very into coding and robotics. And so he told me that he could come and work for me on our engineering team and he could help build the website. And so I had to sort of like gently help him understand that maybe his coding skills weren't there yet to be paid to build our website. But he's very motivated to do that.
But in 2 years, he will be there.
For sure, 100%. And then our babysitter took it one step further and she put him right on Fifth Avenue for the lemonade stand. That is the place to be.
Solid.
He made $600 in one day.
Wow.
I'm sorry, what?
He was out there for 3.5 hours. $600.
How much was he selling each glass of
It just shows you if you're going to open retail, you got to be on the avenue.
It's Fifth Avenue. It's $20 a cup.
Location.
Can't be on a side street.
That's fascinating. Wow, Griffin found the next. You know, maybe it's just New Yorkers, but I do think that, to your point, there's no original idea in this universe, but there is original execution, and there is cornering a market or like figuring out maybe there's a special way of talking about it, or you know, I can imagine him doing his little shtick of like,
well, he had his like social mission element also, which we know
Wow.
is important to consumers now. And so he was giving 50% of his proceeds to a child's hospital.
I love that.
So I think that also helped drive the revenue of that lemonade stand.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Good job.
So he
Well
learned to
done.
give back also.